just sat here in my bedroom, about to pack up and go to the studio. Don't always go to the studio first thing. I kind of do a bit of work at home and admin and bits and bobs, emails and stuff. Anyway, yeah, so I was just actually looking at my website, and I've been doing a lot of stuff with AI recently. When I say that, I mean I'm prompting AI to come up with some good content and asking it questions, generally out of curiosity, also out of wanting to get some good content that I was starting to write myself. And then I thought, well, what if I just asked ChatGPT to write this? And it comes up with the same sort of thing that I would have written, but quicker and often, more structured, and saves me some time. So yeah, with that in mind, I was actually starting to post some of these as blog posts, and I've been asking it some interesting questions that are all aimed towards independent musicians and artists and songwriters and the challenges they face. So yeah, anyway, one of the blog posts I put on my website probably a few weeks ago, and I didn't really do much else with it because I was just kind of busy, and I kind of don't always plan a lot of this stuff. It's a little bit more like I'm just going to put a blog post out and then I'm going to move on with my life, and I often forget to draw attention to that. And so I thought, do you know what? I'm just going to record a podcast episode off the cuff, and I'm going to focus it and a few more episodes on these blog posts, and just kind of maybe get them into the audio form so people can interact with them and feedback on them, really. So yeah, there we go. That's the idea. Thanks for being patient. If you are someone who likes my content, it's something that I don't always have a lot of time to do, so thanks for being patient and listening in. So I asked Google Bard, which is one of Google's AIs. I'm sure they're always improving it, and Google Bard, I always thought it'd be interesting to work with Google Bard on a particular question to see how it compared and see what it came up with in terms of its in-depth answers for a question compared to something like ChatGPT. I did feel like it came back with some good information. And the question I asked it, which is what you're all wondering, is, can you tell me the main challenges of an independent solo artist? And I don't know if I said, could you give me 7? I don't know if it came up with 7 on its own. I can't remember that question. I think a lot of articles, blogs and things, they try to sort of say, well, here are the top 5 things, or 10 things you didn't know you were doing wrong, or all that kind of clickbaity titles. So maybe I did prompt it to say, can you give me 7? But either way, it's given me 7. And yeah, challenges of being an independent solo artist. There are many, and I'm sure some of you, if you're listening, will be experiencing these things. But Google kind of had an interesting response, and it broke them down into 7 different categories. So I'm just going to sort of start reading what it said. Now, Google Bard says that the main problems faced by independent solo artists and singer-songwriters are relating to money, promotion, time, connections, and mental health. Couldn't agree more. These problems can be challenging to overcome, but there are also some benefits to being an independent artist, such as having more freedom and control over your music and career. So it's interesting, it's picking up on the freedom aspect of the DIY world, which is something I feel very strongly about. And the fact that it is something that you can have much more control of. So I'm glad that it's highlighted that. Here is a more detailed explanation of each of these problems and these benefits. So this is where it's gone into the 7 things. So first off, money. And it's really only given 3 lines, or 2 or 3 lines in this subject, which is a huge subject with money. So I was not that impressed by the detail it went into. Maybe I didn't ask it to go into lots of detail, but the money aspect is huge. And it says here, independent artists often have to fund their own projects, which can be difficult and time consuming. Damn right it can. And they may also have to pay for marketing and distribution, which can be expensive. And that's it. That's all it says. I mean, within that, there's a lot of different things. So if you are independent, you'll understand that funding is difficult, and having to fund your own projects, where do we start? Do you do that from your own savings? Do you do that from other people giving you like crowdfunding type things and pre-ordering? Do you do that from selling tickets to gigs and building up? There's so many different ways. Or do you apply for funding and grants from organisations that help musicians, such as Help Musicians? So yeah, it is difficult and it is time consuming, and all of this time that you could be spending on other things like writing and developing a live show, getting some nice videos made, etc. So all of this, it is very time consuming, and obviously paying for marketing, huge thing that people maybe don't or think about or know that much about is marketing and distribution, and it can be expensive. So yeah, those are things to research more, what kind of marketing, what kind of distribution, how expensive is it, how does it work, who does what works for me, and there's a lot in the money side of things. So the second thing, promotion, which is obviously linked to marketing. So it's saying independent artists need to find ways to promote their music and reach new audiences. This can be challenging, especially in a crowded marketplace. It's a very generic statement. It's pretty obvious. You do need to promote your music. If you're independent, it's all on you really, and that again is drawn into the same category as being extremely time consuming and challenging, because it is crowded. There is literally thousands and thousands of artists probably even doing a very similar thing to what you're doing if you're an artist. It's something that not being independent, so being signed or supported by industry, obviously you're going to be having so much more help and support compared to being independent. So yeah, big one that. And yeah, being challenging. I mean, obviously being challenging, it's great, things are challenging, you learn from them, but if you're independent after 10 years and you're still doing the same thing, it's going to grind you down. You're going to be frustrated and feel like you're banging your head against a brick wall probably. So yeah, big one that. And something to think about deeply about what your goals are as an artist and how you are going to use the tools available to promote yourself, and whether to bring in other people. So yes, thirdly, time. These things are all linked together, aren't they? That's what I'm noticing. This is what it says. Independent artists often have to wear many hats, which can be overwhelming. They may be responsible for everything from writing and recording music to booking shows and managing their social media. And that's it. That's all you're getting. So yeah, it's true. Many hats. We're linking this to the fact that you have to pay for it, you have to promote it, and those are all different hats. Responsible for everything. Yes, you are probably responsible for everything. Obviously the writing, you can share that. You might write with other people. Recording music, collaborating with people with studios, people like me who are producers, and remixers, and then booking shows. You'll be dealing with venues and promoters and managing booking agencies and stuff. Social media, I mean, all of these things, such time suckers. So yeah, being independent, you really have to carve out the time, and it's super difficult. So that's the third thing it's picked up on. Connections, number 4. Independent artists need to build relationships with people in the industry in order to get their music heard. This can be difficult, especially if you are starting out. It's quite generic. I mean, it's very, very true. It's nailing it. It is totally true. You do need to build relationships, and people in the industry, putting the words "the industry" in inverted commas, because it's a huge, which part of the industry? Are they managers? Are they labels? Are they radio people, PR? In order to get your music heard by who? I think it can be difficult, and I think with this connections thing, the artists who do, I think, break through to the next level that they want to be at, I'm not talking about going from being unknown to being an A-list, I'm talking about the next level to where you're at. So if you've got 1,000 fans, that's amazing, you've done great. You want to get to 5,000 fans, you need to the people who do that quicker are the ones who leverage their relationships in the industry. And so there's strategies in that, and it can be difficult. So Google Bard is saying it's difficult, especially if you're starting out. Yes, if you're starting out completely, your world is going to be smaller, so there are less connections available to you. So yeah, maybe think about what you can do as an independent, brand new artist to get these connections. Can you collaborate with people who are in the industry? Can you skill swap with them? Can you just go to events where they're at and kind of get advice from them and ask questions and be visible and be honest about the challenges and be honest about your goals, etc. So yeah, lots to think about there. Connections. Mental health, huge one, and a very, very pertinent subject. Personally, I do have and have had issues with my mental health, just relating to being a freelance producer, a musician, and trying to keep that going. Feeling lonely sometimes, isolated, struggling, too many projects, not enough projects, and it hits you. Really, it can get you down. So the music industry, it says here, Google says, the music industry can be a tough place to work, and independent artists are often under a lot of pressure. This can lead to stress, anxiety, and depression. Yes, it can, and it does. And the pressure thing is an interesting one, because you're going to have your goals, you're going to have your things you're striving for, and that's where the pressure comes from. And obviously, if you are independent, the lack of support and doing everything yourself and not having the money. So it all builds up the previous things, the time, promotion, the money, all of that is going to be adding up to this pressure. So yeah, you need to find ways to manage that. If you can't manage it yourself, find community, find people to share with. And this is just generic advice really. I'm not trained in this stuff. I just still feel like, from what I've picked up in hearing people who are experts in things like anxiety and depression talk about community being a big part of alleviating it and sharing it, and being part of a group and being part of a scene or a community can be a very, very powerful way to feel like you're not alone, and maybe share stories and share pressure and share how tough things are. And yeah, anyway, so it's picked up on that. It's a really interesting one. I think if you are suffering, it sucks and you're not alone, and everyone goes through these things. And so I think the main thing is really just to know that the sport's out there and it will pass, Number 6. Was it 5? Oh my god, I've got lost. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is number 6. Google's given me 8 when it said I said 7. Right, okay. Number 6, freedom. Independent artists have more freedom to control their music and career than artists who are signed to a record label. They can make their own creative decisions and set their own terms. Yeah, they can. I think that speaks for itself, that one. Do you lose complete creative control if you get industry support? I don't know if you always do. If you're signed to a record label, it completely depends on the deal you've gone for, the label you've gone for, the type of artist you are, the market you're going to be in. So I'd say maybe Google is assuming that if you're signed, you're going to be manipulated and have less creativity. There are plenty of examples of artists who do maintain complete control of their art. And I imagine, I know that there are also lots of artists who do have to do what the label dictates a little bit more. So it could be a case of what songs make it to the album, what singles get released, the artwork, etc. And you do have to collaborate with the label because they're the experts who are going to be pushing your product. And I think it's interesting because freedom, and this is one of my own personal observations from the people I work with, because I work with independent artists who are generally quite new to their careers and early in their careers. And I do notice a trend in I'm involved with the music making and the creating part of their journey. And I don't think new artists think of what they're making enough as a product. And it sounds cold and calculated and capitalist and not so romantic, but it is a product. If you're paying £1,000 to have a song produced and recorded and mixed, you're not buying your own song to just keep and have. It's not a possession. It's a product that you're going to be marketing to people to sell for profit. Hopefully, I think the freedom aspect of it is great. You want to be able to say what you want to say, but if you're ending up with no one helping you sell that product that you've made, the people who sell the products are the experts in the products and what sells. And the goal should really be to maintain a level of sustainability of your career financially. And that means people are going to buy the music, and the music needs to be marketed to the right people. So artistic freedom, I would personally think that artistic freedom is an amazing thing to have, but an audience is equally, if not more important. And therefore the label is going to be if you're signed, that's the expertise and that's the visibility you're going to get. So if they're saying, we think you should put this single out, they're not always going to be right, but they might. Chances are they know a lot more about the market than you do. And if that gets your £1,000 investment back or more, then it's worth it, surely. Anyway, big debate there, but it's an interesting concept. And they've mentioned freedom, because I think freedom, if you feel like you are giving that up for a label, that's going to feel difficult. But if you start to see the results of that from sales and gig tickets being sold and your career growing, are you going to be whinging about the fact that you didn't have so much creative freedom? I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe. Right, anyway, the next one on the list is revenue. Independent artists can earn more money from streaming and merchandise than they would from traditional record sales. This is because they keep a larger share of the revenue. Interesting music business discussion there. Completely too much to go into, I think. And earn more money from streaming and merchandise than they would from traditional record sales. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. You don't earn a lot of money from streaming. And if you're signed, you're going to get less of a cut, maybe, of that revenue. And yeah, it's to talk about the share of the revenue, really. That's the focus of this point. So I guess it's true. Your revenue will be smaller because you're independent, but your share of that revenue is larger. So yeah, fair play. It's probably 100% share. If you sign a publishing deal, you're going to be giving up a share of the rights to the music, normally 50%. But that's, it's all the side of getting promoted and getting your music pushed and exploited to generate the money. So I think it's good that it's mentioned revenue and the share of the revenue, but I think it's definitely worth flagging that there's not a huge amount of revenue there when you are independent. You need to just be aware that it's got to build, and the industry will help you build that. And I'm sure there's people, you're thinking, oh, there's loads of independent artists who make loads of money. Yeah, they're normally ones who've been around for a long time and have developed their own micro team and their own way of building their fan base, and all power to them. Right, and then finally, creativity. So here we go. Creativity. Independent artists have more freedom to experiment and be themselves. They are not limited by the constraints of a record label. It's kind of the same point as freedom, isn't it? Yeah, I think it's true. Do they have more freedom to experiment and be themselves? Maybe, but then if a label aren't interfering with the music, and they're just looking at what the results are and saying yes or no, we're not going to put that out, you still have creative freedom. But I think maybe the feeling that you might have to fall in line with what a label wants, or you might create like crazy and make something really out there and experimental, and the label will go, well, that's not commercial, we're not going to release that, and that is a constraint. So yeah, interesting, another angle to the freedom thing. What do you think about that? Do you feel like maybe if you got signed to a label you'd have less creativity? Only really the artists who have been signed over the years and can tell a story about that, and I'm sure there's a lot of different variations to that story. And yeah, being a bit of a geek about music, I've definitely heard stories from famous bands or whatever who've made it big where they have had to compromise, but then they've pushed back on the next album, or maybe there's one album where they didn't feel like they had lots of control and they lost their creativity a little bit, but then the next album they moved to a different producer, and that was where it really was more in tune with the label, let them have a chance. So I think it's a little bit of a to and fro. And so the conclusion, so overall, being an independent solo artist or singer-songwriter can be challenging, but it can also be rewarding. If you are creative and passionate about music, then it's possible to be successful as an independent artist. However, it is important to be aware of the challenges and to be prepared to work hard. Yeah, I think it's a good summary. I like how it's sort of said, it can be challenging, but it can be rewarding. Yeah, definitely. The rewards are going to be coming from lots of different things for different people. So if you're thinking your rewards are from playing great shows to packed venues, that feels amazing. If your rewards are selling 1,000 of copies of an album and that's a lot of money for you, brilliant. It is possible to be successful in different ways and see success differently. So yeah, if you're passionate about music and creative, you do need to work hard and think a lot of different things through, and then have the luck that you need. And obviously part of it is making really fucking great music as well, so doesn't really mention that. But anyway, yeah, that's the article, that's the blog post. So that was the 7/8 main challenges of independent solo artists. What do you think? Are there more? I think there are probably expansions like I've gone through. Maybe there are more challenges, but I think that's quite a good summary from Google. So yeah, I hope that kind of was useful. Maybe it's shone a light on some things you hadn't thought about. Maybe there's stuff in there that you're like, yeah, I've definitely experienced that, or I'm struggling with this. Who knows? I mean, maybe the next step is to ask Google or ChatGPT to start answering these questions about how to deal with these things. It's been really great. I've got more articles to share and talk through about these kind of things, and I've been very impressed. And I think if you have got these things in your mind as questions, using AI to give you some insight is fascinating and really useful. All right, cool. Well, thanks for listening. The blog's on my website, stevebakersound.co.uk. I'm Steve. I'm the music producer and musician in Brighton, working with a lot of independent artists and making their songs sound bloody marvellous. All right, take care, guys. Bye.